Tim Brewer coming to you again from Central Texas, from the churches of Bend and Lomita of the United Methodist Church. We're small churches with a big heart. We invite you to come worship with us at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning on Facebook, or to visit any of our web podcasts like we're doing now, or our website. You can find more information about us at Bend UMC, Texas. So we're going to talk about general themes of the Bible, the great themes of the Bible, because I think that's a way we can come to understand, especially if we're just starting out in the Bible study and trying to get a handle on things. If we can have like a vest that we can, with pockets in it, that we can put different ideas and different stories, then we can better understand what we're trying to get into, what we're trying to grasp. So we talk about the general themes of the Bible, the great themes of the Bible. And today we're going to talk about grace. Grace is the loving acceptance of God. Something that we cannot earn. It's given to us by God as a free gift. Back in the Old Testament, they had a way of following the commandments. They had rules of which if you follow them, you would know that you're doing things within the will of God. It got very complicated because there were so many things, so many aspects that they tried to understand. They came up with over 600 small rules to help us obey the Ten Commandments. Paul finally said that it's impossible to follow the Ten Commandments perfectly. None of us can do it well enough to earn God's grace. So God gives us that grace. For example, there's a story of the great theologian Dennis the Menace, who was leaving Mrs. Wilson's house with his hands full of cookies, and Joey's following along with hands full of cookies. And he says, Mrs. Wilson doesn't give us cookies because we're good. Mrs. Wilson gives us cookies because she's good. That's the idea of grace. We don't get them because we're good. We get them because God is good. And that, part of that living grace is that God forgives us for those things that we do that are outside of God's will. So we can still be made right to may have a relationship with God. We don't have to earn it. Out of love, we try to do that. In response to God's grace, we do everything we can. But grace is a free gift that was given to us that we can't really understand or fully grasp. It's an active principle or active force within our lives. It not only accepts us, but it transforms us. We become more like Jesus. We become more like the people that God created us to be, because we know that we are loved. We know we are accepted. Another story I'd share with you is of a pastor who died and went to heaven, and St. Peter says, okay, you need 1,000 points to get into heaven. And he says, well, let's start adding it up. I was a pastor for 40 years. So St. Peter says, well, 40 years of being a minister, that's 2 points. And he says, wait, I was cared for the poor and visited those who were less fortunate and tried to help them. Okay, caring for the poor, that's 2 points. 4 points. By the grace of God, I'm not going to get in. And St. Peter says, the grace of God, 996 points. Come on in. That's what we depend upon. We depend upon God to make it right. And that grace is all through the Bible, because God accepts and loves people who are not very lovable and not very acceptable. He always picks the least likely so that you know that it's God doing it. The grace is all through the Bible. So you can read and look for that grace, that unconditional acceptance by God, a persistent faithfulness that will not let us go. And that's grace. All right, well, see you next time.